Welcome to the Wellness Transformation Journey podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Peters. Usually I have more of a planned out format for when I do an episode, but there was just an anniversary that happened that was very impactful for me in my life that I want to talk a little bit about and how that completely changed my life. So many people may know we just passed the 20th anniversary of when Hurricane Katrina made landfall. And for some people, this may just be a moment in history that we think about or we read about or whatever. But for me, this had a major impact. I was not in those areas when Hurricane Katrina made landfall, but I did do relief work after Hurricane Katrina. And that's played a major role in my life. It's also played a major role in how I react to situations. And it still has an impact on me 20 years later that I rarely talk about. And it's been a journey to try to get through dealing with situations related to that as well as other areas. And I have a lot of I talk a little bit about having some mental health issues. I have a lot of mental health issues related to my experience with doing relief work with Hurricane Katrina. Understand, I was there doing relief work as a college student. I was there doing relief work that did not involve pulling bodies out or more of the heavy emotional stuff, but there were still a lot of emotions. It was still very triggering, and it has had a great impact on my life over the last 20 years. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health, how mental health can be an impact to you, and share my personal story about how my mental health and taking control of my mental health has allowed me to move forward with my life, move forward in my wellness journey, and to let people know that, like I thought I was alone, you're not alone. Many people struggle with many different things. My story is going to be different than someone else's, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. We all have a story. Any experience we have is important. And if you're struggling, if you're not sure where to go, how to deal with this, I'm hoping maybe my story can help a little bit. So I've often alluded to in past episodes that I have struggled with my mental health and how getting control of my mental health has really helped support my wellness journey. When I was able to get a grasp on my mental health, I was really able to start focusing on other things like my physical health and how I was eating. This doesn't mean that I still don't have issues with my mental health, because no matter what, I always run into roadblocks. I still have issues with mental health. I still have anxiety and depression issues related to what I experienced after Hurricane Katrina. But some of us may hit larger roadblocks than others, but it doesn't matter. When you're dealing with a mental health issue, it's still important and it can still have a major challenge when it comes to how you deal with things and how you continue to move forward, not only with your life, but with a wellness journey and becoming a different person. As I've talked about, my whole life has been kind of a conflict of emotions, as it is with most people. This doesn't set me apart in any way. Where I find my life different, and like many people, is that I've spent my whole life, or at least as long as I can remember, living in a larger body. I don't blame anyone for this. That's just the way things are. Part of it's genetic, part of it's the way I eat. There were a lot of different things that were culminating into me being a larger person. But my exercise habits weren't well-rounded. Even though I did exercise, I participated in sports, and I really just never learned to really control any of this. And it became a major challenge as I got older, because as I got older and moved out and lived on my own, I didn't control the way I was eating. I didn't control any of that other than I would go out and exercise, and I kind of believed that if I exercise, then I can go eat whatever I want. It doesn't really matter. Another issue I struggled with was listening to others, and this can support you or it can create larger problems, especially when you take in all the negative. And for me, the negative tended to sink in more than all the positives. The positives would lift me up for a moment or two, but the negatives can really take you down and keep you down if you let them. And my problem was I let the negatives keep me down. That's what I listened to the most, especially when they were really repeated to me regularly. When you're continually told that your body is not acceptable, you can develop a negative opinion about your body. Not only was I told my body was not acceptable, but because my body was not acceptable, I was also told by people that I wasn't smart enough, I was lazy, all this culminated. And then when I would look in the mirror, it didn't help because I would tell myself the same thing in the mirror. Oh, you're stupid, you're lazy, you're not going to do anything with your life. And all this came from listening to the negatives that came out of people and not really understanding myself. Beyond what I was told, I developed a mindset that I was healthy and athletic. I truly believe that I was healthy, and larger people can be healthy. I know a lot of larger people that are very physically active, and that's not putting them down in any way. But I know deep down I was not healthy. My eating habits weren't healthy. Even my exercise habits weren't that great. And to some extent, like I said, I was right that I was healthy. In high school, I was a weightlifter, and I was well above average as a weightlifter. I was a well above average softball player. But the problem I had is I didn't have the drive to either develop the talent, strengthen the talent, strength train beyond what I did for powerlifting. And the biggest thing was I had no desire to build my stamina. I didn't want to go out and run. I didn't want to do anything that involved extra exertion beyond lifting weights. I was constantly reminded of this, and I constantly reminded myself of this, that, oh, you could be a better athlete, you could be a healthier person if you would just go out and apply yourself. But the problem is, years of putting myself down and being put down by others began to add up, and it continued to add up. Well into college, well into after college. Even though I spent a lifetime dealing with my mental health, I had anxiety issues for years. I didn't recognize it, and I just kind of got used to putting on a front. I made the choice to start getting involved in mission trips. When I attended college, I got involved in the Methodist campus ministry at the school I was at. And I loved doing mission trips during breaks from class, like winter break or spring break, or even over the summer. So during spring break of the 2005-2006 school year, I decided to participate in a mission trip to help with cleanup after Hurricane Katrina. And I'm going to really try to get through this, but I can tell you it's extremely hard 20 years later. So please bear with me as I talk a little bit about some of the experiences. I'm not going to go deep into this. But as a 20-year-old who spent months watching the news and seeing all the trauma from one of the most devastating natural disasters in U.S. history, I thought it was a great opportunity to go help. And to be clear, I have no regrets about going and helping. I have no regrets about what I did. I have no regrets about being involved with the cleanup process. However, I had no idea how this experience would impact me for years to come. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the experience. Like I say, I was not pulling bodies out or anything like that. Most of my jobs included going in and gutting houses, cleaning houses out that had been underwater for weeks at a time, spraying for mold and mildew. I had an experience walking on the beach, and walking on the beach was very uncomfortable because you were just seeing debris that had been washed up from months and months of stuff coming back after it had been pushed out. I was not in New Orleans. I was in Bay St. Louis, which was really, in a lot of ways, considered the heaviest hit because of the way the hurricane came in. And the best way I can describe where I was at, it looked like what my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, described to me with the pictures I showed him was, it looked like a bomb had went off at the edge of town along the beach. When you walked, you could see where the tide came in because of where the trees were lobbed off. just to describe it as a 20-year-old is extremely difficult. And anybody that lived through that experience, whether they watched it on the news or you're learning about it now in history, the devastation, what you were seeing on TV, what you were seeing in pictures, it can't be described unless you were there. And I couldn't imagine being someone who was actually in that situation and who was there. But you did develop relationships with some of the people that you came in contact with. I actually came in contact with a couple of the homeowners and helped them as I was cleaning things up. So there were some great experiences with it, but there were also some things that were very traumatic. And while what I've described may not sound traumatic, and to most people it may not be, and like I said, the experience was in so many ways very rewarding, but there were things that 20 years later I still can't forget, I still can't talk about, I still won't talk about. But one thing I learned from this experience is if you don't in some way deal with the trauma, and in my case, I chose to cover it up, it eventually comes to a boiling point and it'll eat at you emotionally, physically, and in all kinds of ways that until you deal with it, you really can't move forward in a lot of ways and with a lot of aspects of your life. So over the years, everything kind of built up, and in many ways, I mentally felt like trash. When I would get stressed, things would get worse. I would have flashbacks. I still have flashbacks. I would just find myself in situations where I would start crying for no reason. I would think about an experience and start crying for no reason. I also noticed I still to this day have issues. The smell of mold and mildew can trigger past experiences. Certain sounds can trigger past experiences. I hate listening to helicopters fly over, and I have a fascination with flight. But hearing helicopters fly over can be very triggering if I'm not paying attention or I'm in the wrong mindset. But outside, I would always put on a front that everything was okay. I smiled, offered help to people, laughed. I even laughed at myself because others were laughing at me when it came to my weight. So it was just easier to join in and not walk away. Because I always felt like if I walked away, people would think there was something wrong with me. Everyone around me thought everything was fine, and how was anybody supposed to know differently? But inside, things were eating me up. I was really struggling. I didn't like myself physically, and to be honest, I didn't like myself in a lot of ways. And the trauma, the flashbacks, I really hated myself for that. For a long time, I thought I had done something wrong by making the choice to do what I had done after Hurricane Katrina. I really was just walking around frustrated, and in a lot of ways, I was a ticking time bomb just to kind of go off. There were triggers from my experience, like I say, from Hurricane Katrina cleanup, that I recognized that I had an issue, but I really tried to ignore it. Over time, I found myself getting angrier and more depressed. I literally, I don't question anybody's faith, but as a Christian, I was really angry with God because I was on a mission trip and this was the experience I had coming back from it. And I hated that. I quit going to church, which, that was a choice. And I just really quit paying attention to a lot of things. This further impacted my physical health because I was not happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the world around me. I didn't really care. And I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't sure who to talk to. See, you got to understand, in my family, we really don't discuss our feelings. And a lot of people in my family look at having psychological issues as a weakness. I've even been told by certain members of my family that I was making things up, even to the extent of I was making it up that I never did Hurricane Katrina relief work, that I just made that up to get attention, and that I needed to learn, and if I was there, I needed to learn to get over it, or to live with it. The problem was, and they didn't understand this it's hard to explain it, but I live with it every day. Even though now I know how to deal with it, I live with it every day. This made me not want to share my issues, not want to share my experiences with anyone. And I was scared, I was confused, and I wasn't sure what I could really do. So after years of hiding behind a front, things really started to boil over. Being a people pleaser didn't help. And I really was, at that time, I was so young. I was starting my career. I was afraid to tell people no when they asked me to do stuff. And before, as there was some pressure on me to perform at work, I handled it and I was able to keep things kind of hidden. But as I gained more responsibility, I tried to keep things under wraps and I kept doing what I was doing, but inside I was really falling apart. I started finding myself in more compromising situations, mostly brought on by myself for not saying no, or not asking for help. And there were other reasons that things culminated as well. When I got too frustrated and overwhelmed, I tended to react like anybody does, but there were many times I overreacted because I really didn't know what to do, and my triggers became even more triggering. The more stressed I got, the more experiences would trigger me. Little things would set me off. Then if little things were setting me off, bigger things were just really putting me over the top. I had no organization in my life, and things just kind of felt like they were spiraling out of control. And in a lot of ways, they were, but nobody really knew that because I was still continuing to put on a front. So I distinctly remember when everything came to a boiling point. I can't tell you the exact date, but it's still fresh in my mind when everything came to a boiling point. One evening I was driving back to campus after getting dinner for my students. So when they would do their shows in the evenings, I would go get them pizza or something. And I had one of my students in the car with me that night, and things had just been really crazy personally, at work, and it was right around the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. It was a couple weeks after the anniversary, and I usually have a lot of issues for a couple of weeks before and after, especially on anniversaries of the hurricane, because you see more about it all over in the news. So there was just a lot of things happening that kind of led up to this moment. And at the time, I was teaching at a school in Western Tennessee. And you got to understand, in Western Tennessee, we don't have the mountains in that, but it's kind of the foothills leading to the Appalachians. So there's a lot of deep trenches and runoffs. And that night, I really considered ditching my car in one of the runoffs because it was enough. I had reached that point. I was done. It was enough. I literally was telling myself, who's going to notice? Nobody's going to know that I'm gone. It's going to take days for people to recognize that I'm here because who really cares? And to be clear, I still struggle with this from time to time, especially when I get into anxiety-driven modes, especially when I start having flashbacks when I'm stressed. The only thing that really stopped me that night was that there was a student in the passenger seat of the car. I love my students, I'm protective of my students, and there was no way I was going to let anything happen to him because of something stupid that I did. But the thing that was good about that night was this was really the turning point and breaking point in my life and my mental health journey. This was the night that I told myself I have to start taking things seriously. I have to get help. And I have to start trusting the people in my life that were trying to get me help. So I understand many people aren't as fortunate as me when it comes to the situation I found myself in. I had a few friends and colleagues who could see weeks and months prior to this that something was wrong, and they had already started trying to intervene. Some of them were just trying to talk to me, calm me down, get me to take breaks. I had one colleague and friend who urged me and actually told me that not only did I need to start going to counseling, but she was going to make me go, whether that meant her taking me or whatever. And this could have fractured our relationship, but looking back on it, I'm so thankful that she did that. And I recognize that had it not been for her pushing me to do that and essentially forcing me to do that, things could have turned out extremely different. Like I said, at the time, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know my whole story. She actually knew I had issues related to Katrina, but to her, that wasn't the point. She knew I needed help, and she was going to figure out how to get it. She knew I was highly stressed. She knew there were a lot of things going on, and she was going to try to get me that help, as were other friends and colleagues. So as I previously stated, my family doesn't talk about personal issues, and counseling was something that was never discussed, or in some instances, members of my family frown upon it, especially when they don't understand the issues I was going through. There wasn't really anybody, after my grandfather died, there really wasn't anybody in my family I could talk to about the trauma that I was experiencing from what I had seen in the Bay St. Louis area. So because of this, my experience with counseling was very limited. I went to counseling once after doing relief work and was told that it would be good to continue, that they felt I had some psychological issues from that. And let's be honest, who wouldn't? But I chose not to because I thought that if my family found out or members of my family found out, I would be ridiculed. So during the aforementioned incident, I was attending counseling sessions at that time, but I wasn't really taking them seriously. I trusted the counselor. I had a good relationship with the counselor. I was beginning to slowly and painstakingly open up about everything, but I was fighting the process a lot. But that night kind of shifted everything a little bit. It wasn't easy to start opening up more, but it helped. And I had a major slip. And like I say, that helped kind of push me and propel me to moving forward and taking the next steps. So here's where I was fortunate. I got back to campus that night, and I dropped the student off at the building so he could start helping get set up for production. There was another faculty member there. I told him, I didn't even talk to him. I just told the student, I said, tell him that I'm going up. I got to talk to somebody. I'll be back. I immediately went up to where the counselor's office was on campus, but she wasn't available. So I called a friend who didn't answer immediately, but I knew she was in class. But I also knew that if she saw that I was calling, she was going to call me back because I wasn't going to call her during class unless it was an emergency. And I needed help. She immediately called me back. We talked, and she wasn't available to come to me, but I found out later, put a lot in process to make sure that I was okay. Because I kept telling her, I remember distinctly, I kept telling her, everything's fine. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just need to talk. I just need to get things off my chest. And thank God, she kind of read through my BS, but she knows me very well. And what I didn't know was that as soon as I hung up with her and headed back down to production, that she immediately called or texted my colleague that was down in the production area and my friend who also happened to be the campus chaplain to let them know that, hey, something's not right with Pam. I need you guys to check on her. So I actually spent the evening going about finishing the student broadcast, talking to my colleague who was down in the production area with me. And I tried to act as though nothing happened. And in my mind, he didn't know. Like I said, I just found out recently that she had actually let him know. Um, and then I went home. I went home and just kind of went about like, tried to go about like nothing had happened. I can't, I would be lying if I said I didn't sit in my bed and think about how crazy things were, what was going on, because I did. I got a phone call from the chaplain that night. He was supposed to come check on me. He lived just a few doors down from me in campus housing. He was out handling some stuff with students, but he called to check on me and make sure things were okay. The next morning, my friend, I went to her office and met with her because she wasn't going to let me go about the day until she knew everything was okay. And looking back on it, I realized I had a lot of eyes on me, or a couple of eyes on me for the next few days, really the next few weeks, making sure that I was okay and wasn't going to do anything crazy. And like I said, until recently, I wasn't sure how much my friends that helped knew. I've since learned they were very aware of it. Due to how much it impacted not only me, but them, we don't discuss it. Actually, my friend that I originally called when the counselor wasn't available, we've never discussed it. It was actually the chaplain who told me that, yeah, she knew what was going on. So understand, if you find yourself in a situation like that, it's terrifying. You don't know where to turn. I get that. But there is somebody who will help. Seek them out before, I was very fortunate, that somebody, this sounds crazy, but that I had a student in the car with me that kept me from doing something extra. And it gave me the time to kind of get a little bit level-headed and go ask for help. Because trust me, there are people who will notice you're gone and they will miss you. And there are people who will jump in and help. So over the last few years, I've started to slowly open up about my experiences with mental health. This is the first time I'm really publicly talking about how far and how bad it got. I've learned through counseling and different things to recognize my triggers. I've also learned how to not so much control them, but to handle my reactions to them. This is part of my therapy for myself. This is part of my counseling that I used to go through. I'm currently not in counseling, but I will go back into counseling at any moment that I need, that I feel it's necessary. I also see it as a way to help others. So by me discussing my experience, it allows other people to understand they're not alone. Because fighting a mental health issue can make it feel like you're the only one experiencing trauma. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with students or people that are experiencing trauma and they're like, and I know I sounded like this, you wouldn't understand, people don't understand how much trauma I'm going through. They don't understand my experience. And I always tell them I may not understand your personal experience, but I understand going through trauma, and I will share some of my story with them. This isn't to say that your trauma isn't important, because it definitely is. But what you should understand is that there are spaces that will allow you to handle it, cope with it, and learn to live with that trauma in ways that are healthy for you or healthier for you. So I say this saying, seeking support through counseling has been a major step for me. I've gained a lot of confidence in myself, and I've learned to understand who I am. Learning about myself has involved talking to a lot of people that I trust about some of my deepest issues. I can tell you what I experienced in Hurricane Katrina, or after Hurricane Katrina. There are only 2 people in my life that are still alive who know what those experiences were. And I talked to them about it. I shared that with them because I knew they wouldn't go out and share that with a lot of other people. I don't want those. I pick and choose what experiences I share, because there are some experiences that are still triggering to me, as would be with anybody. They know that because I know they'll support me, I will go to them. And they're, like I say, they're not going to share my struggles unless I want them to. You don't need to tell everybody or anyone that you're going to counseling. You don't need to tell anybody, and I've never told anybody what I actually talk about at counseling. You don't need to share with people that you're getting help. There's people that now they know, but there's people in my family that because they used to make fun of me, I never shared that I was getting counseling. But I will tell you this, getting your story out, sharing what's going on in your head, sharing what causes those deep emotional traumas, those deep emotional outbursts, it's a relief. But it does not mean it's over. Like I say, I live every day with certain triggers. I have learned to handle them, but it doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean there aren't points where I just want to sit down and cry. As I'm talking now, I'm crying as I'm sharing this. But what it is it's a relief, and it allows you to let other people know what you're experiencing, but you can choose who you share that with. But it's also good therapy for you to get that out. To know that there are people that are compassionate and will help you is a relief. So this is a little bit deeper than I really expected to get into this, and it's a much longer episode than I planned to have, but I wanted to share this information because I know how many people who struggle with their weight and health and really their overall wellness are often impacted by mental challenges. I've said this quite a bit through this episode. My trauma hasn't gone away. It's part of my life. It's part of who I am. I've learned ways and strategies to work with and live with the trauma. And with the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina here, I found myself thinking about it a lot. And to some extent, I've been reliving some of my experiences. In some ways, I feel like I'm reliving it all over again. I don't watch the news stuff about it. I don't watch the anniversary stuff about it. It's too triggering. But where I always struggle, in August and early September, my emotions are always at a tug of war. When like I say, certain things, like when I smell mold and mildew, it causes my emotions to get overwhelmed. Actually, the other day I was cleaning up some mold thing that I had created, and I was almost crying as I did it because it was triggering. So like I say, every year I always have those emotions. This year's felt different, probably because I'm seeing more about it. And I'm sharing this as not only therapy for me, but as a way to support others. Again, remember, everyone's story is different, but everyone's story is important. As we go through life, if we don't deal with it, it can continue to compound and feel out of control. This can make moving forward in some areas almost impossible, like with your physical health. I'm not an expert on mental health. I don't claim to be an expert on mental health. I can only share my experience as a way to potentially help someone else. So no matter how deep the issue of trauma is, seeking help is the right move. There is someone that will listen to you. I cannot repeat that enough. There is someone who will listen. If there are people that are going to make fun of you or you don't feel comfortable sharing it with, they don't need to know. No one needs to know but you and your therapist. And while it may feel like there aren't people out there who care, I guarantee there are. I've been in that position, and I guarantee someone out there cares. So with that, I hope if you're someone that is listening to this and you're not sure where to turn, this helps you feel more confident and comfortable in seeking help and understanding that you're not the only one out there who deals with issues, and you can get help. There are people out there who will help you. Thank you, and I look forward to getting back on track and talking with you next week.